Okay, so I am coming to you from JTS today, and they're doing construction just north of here, as you probably know, on the new Columbia buildings. So I apologize if you hear a lot of jackhammering in the background. That was not my intention, and I will try to speak loudly so that you can hear me over the roar of whatever is going on outside. In any case, nice to reconnect with you over video. It was wonderful to see you a few weeks ago. We are heading into topic 5, which is called Connecting the Dots, Aligning Research Questions, Literature Review, Methodologies, and Theoretical Framework. So, what I hope to do in this video is to talk about things we need to keep in mind as we are striving for what we will call coherence within a larger research project. And of course, you are thinking about this as you will be creating a research proposal. So I just want to briefly start off by revisiting the discussion that you had a few weeks back now already about the 2 literature reviews and what constitutes a literature review. So you compared these 2 literature reviews. You will be looking at many more literature reviews as you delve into your final project and come to craft your own literature review. As you came to understand, the goal of the assignment was for you to recognize how literature is used to contextualize the research that you are proposing. As came up in our in-person discussion, there are times where a literature review is created after the fact, after data has been gathered or even analyzed. But as I so strongly said, we strive to craft a literature review as we are developing our methodologies and beginning to frame a project. For a variety of reasons, this is the most ideal. As many of you are already seeing, engaging with the literature can help one to reshape a research question, to think about methodologies, to think about what's already been done, to think about what might need to be reframed. So for all those reasons that you're already engaging with and understanding, that is ideal. But as you're also seeing, there are many different ways that literature reviews are actually created, and sometimes they are created after the fact and added on. And that'll, of course, impact the way in which the literature review is often integrated into the discussion of the actual research. O'Connor must argue back to key theorists in her field, Ogbu, I believe it's pronounced Ogbu, as her research findings did not align with his primary theories. So also, you might find that you're going to craft a literature review, and then when you actually get to the stage of conducting your dissertation research, you'll find you have to go back and refine a literature review to make sense of the overall product and to develop even deeper coherence. But at this stage, as you're noticing, as you're engaging in collecting your 5 citations, and I've given you all some preliminary feedback to help you to shape your citations and the range of your citations, you're seeing that you're thinking about the range of the literature in with which you want to engage. You're trying to get a feel for both the content and the structure of a literature review. Try for right now, you're going to be reading 2 dissertations in the next couple of weeks. Be engaging in this voice thread assignment, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. As you read these 2 dissertations, definitely look at their literature reviews as well and how they are structured. Of course, it's a dissertation, not a research article, so it's more of a traditional form of 5 or 6 chapters to a dissertation. And the literature review is usually the 2nd chapter. As you read these 2 dissertations as a whole, try not to get lost in the overarching content, although the content will undoubtedly be very interesting to many of you. I want to ensure that you're looking at the structure of the different literature reviews of Rebecca Shargel and Debbie Miller, who successfully completed the in-house doctoral program here several years back. I want you, and this leads into what I'll be talking about more broadly in this video, to keep an eye on the ways that they have achieved coherence. You're starting to think about this big picture. We've now looked at lots of different pieces of what goes into a research project. Over the next month, we'll be thinking more about methodologies, but you've begun to play around with that as well as you've engaged in the punch reading and others. Several of you, when we met together in person, referred to this as your big question that you're wondering about right now as you, with this course and as a researcher, what does it mean to connect the dots, have different pieces of the study speak to one another, have big pieces of the data speak to one another? Great. This is what we should be thinking about right now as we're trying to pull together the different strands of what it means to develop a research study. As you're seeing, there is no one right way to approach a research project. And as I will say a few times in this video and have said many times to you as well, it is a quite iterative process, nonlinear, discursive, use the word that you prefer. There's many ways to frame your research question, to position the literature, etc. But you want to be constantly striving for the best you can as you move along and it further develops, coherence and consistency among the different elements of your project. There should be a strong and logical relationship between your research question or questions, your literature review, the theories you draw from, the methods that you select, and ultimately the results in the discussion, which you will not be including in this proposal, but will come eventually as you move along with this program. A lack of coherence, I want to suggest and argue, will negatively affect your research project ultimately. So this lack of coherence often emerges during the nonlinear process of developing your research project. Now, I'm really glad that so many of you wrote to me when you were gathering your 5 citations and you said, you know, my research question needs to be reshaped a bit. Is that okay if that emerges directly from my engagement with the literature? And the answer here is yes, absolutely. I think that this will happen, and there is going to be a back and forth, and that can be frustrating at times, but I think ultimately when we are open to shifting pieces of our project, we ultimately do reach stronger coherence. You might have developed research questions, and then you're thinking about methodologies, and then you move into developing your literature review. That might happen at some points in time when you're developing research. I want to just caution us, sometimes we get very excited about particular pieces of the literature, and I'm guessing this is going to be happening with you, an article or a theoretical piece that really sparks your thinking in a new way. And then you might start to shift the focus of your project. Again, this is okay. What some people forget to do, and is so crucial, and where I will be hopefully helping you out over the next month or so, is to then go back and refine and revise your research questions accordingly. So again, I'm so glad several of you asked that question to me individually in your emails of, is it okay if my research question grows and shifts and is molded by my thought process as I'm engaging with the literature? The answer is yes, as long as that key piece actually happens, that then you actually refine your research question to fit where your thinking is changing. It's okay to shift your focus during this nonlinear process, but you need to keep an eye on the flow between research questions, the lit review, and the methods. Do your research questions actually address what you say you are studying in the lit review? And in the methods section, do the methods you have come up with actually help you to research what you say you want to find out about in your research questions? And again, I know you're not in this place yet, but over the next month, 6 weeks or so, you will be getting there. So you want to keep bringing yourself back to this idea of coherence. So again, as you look at these 2 dissertations, this will give you an opportunity, first of all, to look at 2 people, how they engaged in doctoral research in process and what they came up with. And of course, as I've said many times already in this video, to be thinking about how they have achieved coherence. When we shift to topic 6, we'll be thinking about coherence with theories, how your theoretical framework matches what you are striving to study. So more on that, but as I give you feedback on your research questions and continue to give you feedback, you will see that we will be beginning to now take steps to think about how there could be coherence between our research questions and our methodology. I've already written this to a few of you as you're beginning to shape up your research questions, thinking, this is a really interesting research question. How would you actually go about studying this? And you might find as you play around with methods or ideas of methods that you then have to go back and reshape the research question. Is your question what we would call actionable? Is it operationalizable? Is that a word? This might seem a bit backwards, as ideally one would develop the most appropriate research questions and then consider how to best answer them. But it often helps us to refine our questions when we fast forward and imagine how we would collect data for any given question. So I know I'm asking you to kind of go back and forth here between different processes, and hopefully by the end of the semester they'll come together in some sort of an aligned way for you, at least for this contained process. I want to say you should feel very good that you are actually at this process of having a research question down on paper, on Blackboard. That is a huge step, a huge one. So you should feel good about that. That's a great beginning. You're already making some choices, and that you've already gathered 5 citations. Even if the feedback I gave you was that your citations were a little off and you need to go back and look at some other bodies of literature, you're already starting to engage in the process. And I find for myself and for other researchers, sometimes this can be the roughest part. Even though we have our creative juices flowing and it can be exciting to think about possibilities of research, actually narrowing it down and getting ourselves moving can be the toughest piece. So you're already starting it. That's great. Now, obviously, again, you're thinking about how you want to operationalize these questions. How would I answer this question? Please do not be discouraged, or you might feel discouraged. I can't tell you not to, but try to keep yourself centered on the fact that I'm taking you through little steps here. You're learning how to step into this long process of developing research. And that, of course, you will be continuing to follow these strands of what you're interested in throughout your doctoral process. So even if you feel like some of you were asking what are the goals of this course, and I answered on Blackboard and also in person when we met together, I don't expect you're going to have it all worked out by the end of this semester. The idea is if I can get you by the end of the semester to have some thoughts about more than some thoughts. If I can get you to really see how these pieces can best align with the example of one research project, that is wonderful. So just a little bit more here about going back to literature reviews. Your literature review sets the stage for your own research. In it, you will share what has been done in the past, what has been explored. So you are leading into ultimately for a rationale for why your research is important. It either adds to the existing research, it fills a hole, it looks at the problem in a different way. You might argue, as several of you have already begun to see, there's not a whole lot related to what you're actually, the crux of what you want to study. So that might be where you'll get to by the end of the literature review, why what you want to study is so important, because there actually haven't been many studies that address this specific question. But you are, I think what some of you have noticed going through this process of offering up 5 citations is that some of you first emailed me and said, there's nothing, I don't know what to do. And then I gave you some suggestions of bodies of literature where you might look that you hadn't considered before. And then the ball really got rolling there. So if you are struggling, it might be that there's really not a whole lot to look at. It could be that there's not a whole lot to look at that is directly related to exactly what you want to study, but there could be other bodies of literature or theory that could be helpful to you in order to position, to frame your study. And if you're having problems with that, I've given some preliminary suggestions to each of you. We can bring it to the fore to the whole group as well. So if you feel like you're really not sure where to begin, let's keep exploring that. This is the idea of developing a theoretical framework. Your framework, slightly connected but slightly different from the review of research out there, literature. It could be that you're going to have a framework that will draw from fields in general education or other fields as well, bodies of theory. The other thing about citations is, I wrote this on Blackboard, you might feel like there's so much to look at. Some of you might feel like there's not a lot to look at. Some of you might come up with tons and tons of citations and you're not sure where to look. This is the idea of what's called purposeful sampling. For this particular paper that you will be generating, I'm only asking you to look at 12 citations, so you want to choose very carefully. And perhaps if you're looking at several different bodies of literature or theory, you want to choose what you think will be the most useful ones from a few different bodies. And again, if you need help with that, we can surely talk about it. One other thing I want to bring up in this video is there can be a tendency, as you are further exposed to different articles, research in the field, to comparing your minds to what you hope to do. And that is really understandable. I imagine you're always going to have a bit of that going on, of reading someone else's work and thinking, well, how does this compare to what I hope to do? What do I think about this article and research from a researcher's perspective? How would I be critiquing it? That is great. I want you to be speaking back to the articles. And I'm going to add to that you might read something and initially say, well, I just dismissed this. This doesn't feel useful, or this doesn't really relate. Look it over again. Consider the choices the researcher made. In the end, you might still decide the study is a weak one, but before dismissing it, spend more time digging into what the researcher did accomplish. There can be a tendency in literature reviews to talk about a body of research as if the researchers aren't real people. I remember the first time I went to a conference, and thank goodness I had cut out of my presentation some of the strong critiques I had of this researcher. I was talking about something, a very narrow field having to do with drama education, and I found one study that related, but I had some real issues with how it was written. I ultimately really softened the way I talked about, addressed some of the critiques. It turned out that person had seen I was on a panel. This was a general education conference in reading, and the researcher of that article had come to my session. So thank goodness I didn't even know this person would be at the conference. I bring that up to say that sometimes we can talk about studies as if there's not real people behind them, and talk about them as if they're just floating in the air. It's great to take a critical stance and talk back to the articles, as you've been doing so richly and so beautifully on NB. I've been so impressed with the way you've been engaging with these articles and positions of the researchers. We want to continue to engage in that way as you conduct your literature reviews. You want to be looking at the bodies of literature and thinking, first of all, from a research perspective, if it was looking at data that emerged, describing what was the data, what were the data points, talking about the methodology of the research. If it's a more theoretical article, really pulling out, well, what are the underlying theories? And then you're going to be looking for connections between the different bodies of research, either thematic connections or methodological connections, and we'll talk about that more as time goes on. But I say all this to just remind us, as you're reading articles, at first blush, it might look like it's not a good article, or we might just term it as not useful. But try to look at it again and see what in there could be helpful to you for framing your own understandings of your research. If we do critique a body of research or a theory that is all okay too, but we have to resonate and we have to acknowledge why it does not resonate with us, and be upfront about that. I think that is pretty much what I want to say in this video. It's fairly long. We're at 20 minutes, so I'm going to stop. Just to upfront that we have this VoiceThread assignment coming up. This might be new to some of you. It's my first time using it, to be totally transparent. I just see it as another way we can hear one another's voices commenting on some broader questions as we compare and contrast the two dissertations that you will have read, and talk about the coherence or how the elements of coherence within, or any critiques you might have. So go to the link, play around with it. You can do audio, you can do video, you can type text. Just play around, and if you have further questions, I can also post a tutorial on VoiceThread. Okay, looking forward. See you soon.